Hello and welcome to Hardcore Miniatures. I am Core, and in this video I will show you how I painted this Alpha Legion Possessed Marine. This is the second of a two-part series on how I created a piece titled A Duel of Monsters. A Chaos versus Tyrannid duel where Possessed Marine is about to shred the Tyrannid Homagants to pieces. Because come on, there is no chance for a lone Homagant to stand facing a Chaos Space Marine, particularly one juiced up by the powers of the Chaos Gods. The Alpha Legion might be the least corrupted from all the traitor legions, but there are a few instances of demonic influence in the lore, notably the demon prince Carnax Voldorius and his followers, who are mentioned in the 8th edition Chaos Space Marine Codex and the White Scars novel Hunt for Voldorius. So, with this in mind, let's get started. I started by priming with Valero Ghost Grey Surface Primer, but you could very well start with black and build Zenithal highlights with a brighter grey. But for this one, I chose to walk in reverse and build my shadows in a very controlled fashion, using a mix of black, ivory and glazed medium for transparency. Then I added a little more black to the mix for a few places where I want stronger shadows, using a bright grey rather than white to ensure that my colors won't come out too bright or oversaturated. For the base color, I experimented with a mix of turquoise, frog green, ivory and ice yellow to get as close as I could to the sea green color characteristic of the Alpha Legion. The third generation of AK interactive paints are highly pigmented, so I went back with a very transparent mix of black and glazed medium to build back those shadows. Doing the same for the highlights with a mix of turquoise and glazed medium. Right from the start, I knew that I wanted his skin to look thick and demonic with a very pale purple. I based it with a mix of purple and ivory, progressively building that color over several thin layers. Adding more ivory to the mix, I started building highlights, while making sure to preserve some of the darker purple in the recessed areas. My paint is thinned down to a milk consistency to progressively build a natural transition between shadows and highlights. As you can see, I am applying the paint quite loosely, and this is because I committed myself to be efficient with this piece. I tend to be a pathological perfectionist and spend way too much time painting every single miniature. And while it feels great to be able to push your skills at the highest level you can reach, doing so at a competitive standard isn't really suited to making YouTube videos. It is not just having to awkwardly keep the miniature in frame at all times, but it takes an insane amount of editing time, and video will require to be much longer than most people's attention. All the claws, horns and bone elements were painted in black, with the idea of later giving most of them red highlights. There's definitely a lot of them, but maybe none as visually striking as the right knee, which I find is a crucial part of this design. Same for his power pack and for elements that I will later paint metal. On to some shading with our trusty Nuln Oil that I'm applying in every recess of the armor that I can find. This is giving a boost of definition by increasing contrast in a very efficient way. All the metallic parts of the armor are now painted with Valero Silver. It may be because of using this metallic paint range for years on other mediums, but those are still my favorite for painting true metallics. I'm open-minded though, and I don't mind using other brands. Actually, I would love for you to share which metallic paints are your favorites by leaving a comment on this video. I based in black a few more elements that I wasn't sure yet how to paint, like all the gross organic tubings, the numerous bones erupting on the right shoulder pad, or the large skull on his left gauntlet. Back to Nuln Oil, but this time to pass over all the metallics. Back to the skin with a mix of violet ink and glazed medium that I apply in the recess of the skin to define his muscles. This is right away making a massive difference and is way more efficient than if I use a darker purple to base the skin. Inks are highly pigmented and tend to easily stain the paint, so adding a glaze medium to the violet ink makes it easier to push the pigments where you need them and gives me more control to build a natural blend on the skin. You could also use contrast paint mixed with a glaze medium to achieve something similar. The end of his massive talon/claw is going to be black, and the purple glaze will prepare for a clean transition. I made a mix of turquoise and glaze medium to give some punch to the armor by applying the glaze like an island on each panel and making sure to not cover the contrast that I built with Nuln Oil. Time for the first edge highlight with a mix of turquoise and ivory, applied with a size 1 Series 35 Da Vinci Maestro. The Series 35 is actually a very good range if you are looking for quality brushes. This miniature is clearly very detailed, but I actually spent less time edge highlighting on this model than on a simple Space Marine intercessor. This is of course partly because of using true metal paint for the trims, and I would have spent countless more hours on this model if I painted it with NMM, or even true metallics to a higher standard. As I mentioned earlier, I wanted it to be efficient and not another project taking a few weeks to complete. Full transparency, the complete project, including building the base and painting both miniatures, was done in 2 sessions spanning over 2 days, which is pretty reasonable. This would have paid off, but then we had to take a break from making content for over a year, and we're sitting on all that footage ever since. Shit happened, and still I am glad that I managed to hold up to my commitment. And while I will always strive to make quality painting, I will apply this mantra for future content. For the second pass of highlights, I simply increased the amount of ivory in the press mix. I find it such a satisfying part of the process, and while this is by no means the definitive way to paint a miniature, adding those few edge highlights quickly bring it to life. How many edges you can stomach is of course up to you and varies from one painter to another, but you could very well get away with only painting those most visible. We would like to hear your thoughts on the kind of tutorials that we are making and the type that you do enjoy watching. Well, if you are still watching after 8+ minutes, it means that you didn't get bored out of it yet. But are you more into the fast-paced, jumping through steps kind of videos, or do you prefer when creators show real-time painting across the miniature? I myself enjoy long-form videos, but I do understand that this is not always the case for everyone, and choosing which part of the footage to share with you will remain tricky. Let's get back to the skin with a mix of violet ink and white that I glaze over all the parts that should be naturally illuminated. It looks very subtle on camera, but gives extra depth to the skin and progressively build a natural blend between shades and highlights. With all the sharp details on his demonic skin, this is actually fairly easy to do, as long as you keep minimal paint in your brush and avoid flooding the areas that should stay darker purple. The transition to purple was still a little rough between the skin and the large talon, so again I used a mix of purple ink and glaze medium to carefully push pigments and create a smooth blend. I followed the same process for the twisted organic exhaust on his power pack, painting them with the same recipe as for his demonic flesh. First with a bright mix of purple and ivory, and then by increasing the amount of ivory into that mix. Finally, and as for the rest of the skin, I use violet ink to build up the darker parts. Next, I mix together laser yellow, frog green and deep green to bring to life all that demonic energy which is spilling out from this model. The green color was carefully chosen because this Traitor Space Marine has no Legion markings, and I wanted something to remind of the Alpha Legion iconic green Hydra that I had on my decals in the 90s. It took a few layers to get where I wanted the colors to be for the sake of control and depth, but for efficiency I would recommend first painting those elements in white to make the color immediately vibrant with one layer. At this stage, I wasn't decided yet on how to paint the eye, so I just added ivory to the first mix. To highlight the green elements that I just painted, I then raised the ratio of laser yellow into the first mix. And finally, to give that green hue a boost of brightness, I glazed over it with a mix of fluorescent yellow and fluorescent green. I added some detail to the eye by painting a black vertical pupil and highlighted the upper and lower eyelids with ivory to prepare for glazing. Those highlights were then glazed over with the same mix of yellow and green fluorescent paints, resulting in some very bright highlights. Alright, this process marine is really coming around, but there's still a lot of details to add. To paint its teeth, I started with a base of sand yellow that will later be highlighted with ivory. I wanted hooves and claws to be distinctively highlighted compared to the other growths, starting with a medium grey that made from a mix of black and ivory. Those same edges were then further highlighted by raising the ratio of ivory for black. To give the cracks on his left shoulder pad a slight green glow, I started by painting some of the edge around the bursting eye with pure ivory, followed by a mix of fluorescent yellow and fluorescent green applied as a glaze over those edges. Again, very subtle on camera, but enough to give it a gentle green hue. Time to give some wickedness to all the other demonic growths with a mix of deep red and black red to paint gory highlights. Red highlights on black elements might not seem very natural, but there's nothing natural about this dude, and the rule of cool must always come first. For the second pass, I increased the amount of deep red into that mix to paint smaller and brighter highlights. I love that look, and this is a style that I would love to try on something like a Tyrannid Hive Tyrant. As you can see, I also faded to black his large talon and the power pack jets off camera. To improve the transition on his talon, I painted this edge with a mix of ivory and violet ink, followed with just violet ink to make it better fade to black, by pushing more pigments to the darker end. Let's go back to those red highlights with a third pass, adding ivory to the first deep red and black red mix with shorter and brighter highlights. There's a variety of tubing on this model as expected with a Space Marine armor. Some appear mechanical, but most are actually very gross fleshy mutations that I first based in black red, layered over with a mix of black red and ivory to accentuate the organic feeling. Yep, this looks deliciously gross and further highlight the madness that went into that mutated horror. I get the undeniable appeal for all that power, but man, I really hope this was the look that you were signing for. Back to the armor to add brighter highlights to this adorable squishy face on his left leg. This awesome element isn't normally very visible because of the stance making it face downward, so I am glad that it will be propped up by the rock base. You won't see much of it on camera, but I also painted these bulging veins with a mix of purple and ivory to make them stand out from the rest of the skin. After consideration, I decided on matching the color of the erupting skull on his left gauntlet with the various growths that were highlighted in red. This gives the paint job more symmetry and I avoid getting distracted by yet another color. As for the eye on his pauldron, I settled for an Eye of Sauron kind of look, with a mix of deep red and black red and with ivory in that mix for highlights. To give it a little boost of vibrance, I glazed over the highlights with fluorescent yellow. Talking about eyes, why not add more of that demonic energy by pulling green paint inside the skull orbits? Restricting the amount of colors is paying off, avoids visual clutter and makes the paint job better balanced. We already mentioned in previous videos that a lot of people aren't particularly excited about painting power packs. It's a lot of detail packed behind the mini, the design is often quite basic, But damn, this one looks so wicked and I'm having a blast working on it. Like, look at the tip of the spine that seems to be dangling from the power pack. I mean, come on, imagine him running through the battlefield and wagging it like a cute little tail. This is for me the best as a hobby is collecting a Chaos Space Marine army compared to Loyalist chapters. They have so much diversity that you are less likely to feel like ripping your eyes off after painting a full squad worth of power packs. Let's add some quick final details to this miniature by using the side of my brush to paint silver over the metal edges of the shoulder pads. And finally, I use Rayclan Flay Shade to add a little weathering to the armor. Not by splashing it all over the miniature, but rather surgically over some of the metallic elements. And with this, my possessed Space Marine is now complete. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please leave it a like and comment if you did. And I'll see you soon. Bye bye!